Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
Hello. So I had some random thoughts that I didn't know if it would be useful dialogue for anybody else. And I kind of wanted your thoughts on this too. And if I say like, what is the topic? I honestly, I'm so rambly right now. I don't know that I've even what you would call this, but yeah. I guess it's kind of two pieces and we can pick one of the pieces or we could talk about something altogether different if you don't think any of this is useful. But, like who is, when somebody says, oh, he's a nice guy. And I guess to me, like digging under the surface a little bit, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And I'll give you some, for examples here in a minute. And then in the same vein, like customer service. And I found myself, especially with the two more recent hires that we had. And I know in our interview, I kind of said, and I don't know where I got this from. Something instigated me to kind of think this and then say this. And I said it to the one, and then the other one we interviewed the next week, and I said it to her again. I was like, you know what? I'm going to make sure I keep this verbiage and this line of thought in my toolbox. But I think to me it was like good customer service. This is where I'm going with this. I remember now what got me. It was the person that left at the end of the summer, and she's excellent at certain things. Mm-hmm. But my question is, she was also frustrating in things. So, for example, she's excellent at interfacing with the patient when they walk in the door. Mm-hmm. Excellent at answering phones and getting the call taken care of and what the patient needed taken care of smoothly, effectively, efficiently. But when you look at other facets of what she was able to contribute, that was pretty much it. And so, so she resigned, and now I'm looking for her replacement. To me, I kind of went, well, in a way, she was kind of more or less a one-trick pony. And luckily, she was outstanding at that one trick. But I don't want another one trick. We can't really afford to have another one trick. And I mean literally afford, because right now what people are asking for, I can't have 5 different people each doing one trick. Yeah. And then what has been happening in our practice really for the bulk of the summer, if not longer, has been there's 2 or 3 people that are capable of handling more. And it's really not become fair because those people are absorbing most of the tasks while some of these other people handle 1 or 2 things very well, but then now they're asking to get paid higher and more. Anyway, y'all know the cycle. I know everybody's going through this, right? And not just in our dental field. I'm sure this is across the board. So to me, I was like, well, she's kind of been always seen as our customer service person. And I was like, but you're skimming the surface of customer service. Because to me, I expect before the patient comes in, if we have their insurance information, that we've at least verified if they have benefits or not. Mm-hmm. We have sent them the correct paperwork. Because as a consumer, as a customer walking into an office, I want my paperwork done so I don't have to think about it. I don't have to stress about it in the office. Did I bring my insurance card? Did I bring my kid's social security card? Like, that's going to stress me out walking into an office. And now you've sent me the paperwork. I've taken the time to do the paperwork. And to get to the office and find out that you sent me the wrong paperwork, I would go ape bleep on that office. I would leave, right? So to me, the customer experience matters. Those details matter. And yes, we always say to every patient that we don't know what your true bill is going to be because we don't know about insurance, blah, blah, blah. But have we done some semblance of digging and not? And what are we saying? Like, if we're not going to check your insurance at all, then I think that's what we should say. I don't know, ma'am. I don't know what your insurance is going to cover. The office fee is $200. So that's the most you can expect to pay out of pocket for this. Yeah. But if we're pretending like we're looking into your insurance and then, oopsie, we were way off. Like, that to me is not good customer service. Whatever's going to leave a bitter taste in that patient's mouth, to me, is not good service. So even keeping on time, that's super important to me. as a consumer, I don't like waiting. And I get it. At a medical office, you expect to wait, but I hate it. I do not like it. I wish it didn't have to be that way. You're wasting my time here. Yeah. So for me, as an entire office, if we sent the wrong paperwork, that means now you've got to fill out the right paperwork, which means your appointment gets started later, which means somebody else gets, their kid gets brought back before your kid gets brought back. And then if the doctors are off like chatting and having coffee in the office and aren't seeing the patient, or now somebody didn't show up to help and now we're an assistant down. And so like all of these, there's so many aspects to customer service that are not in our control. The kid that took twice as long because their behavior was bad, or the teenager that came in that now has braces and isn't brushing. So there's going to be things that are going to throw us off. So what can we do to mitigate that? All the things that we can control, have we done our due diligence to address all of those?
Right.
So that to me is true customer service, not just, hi, how are you today? You having a good day? I mean, that's important too. But my comment to both of these two new hires was, I can get that at Starbucks. Somebody can say good morning to me at Starbucks. That's fine. I need more than that. I need you to give me more than the last person sitting in this seat, because she was very good at these two things, but then she was pretty much not helpful at all on a lot of the detailed aspects of things, like getting if the patient has said that they were referred from, Molar Dental down the street, did we do our due diligence to get those x-rays like the mom asked us to? Do we have the school note ready to go? We're a pedo office. We know these patients are going to want a school note. It should not be a surprise when the patient comes up. Do you need a school note? It should already be ready, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The parent shouldn't even have to ask for it. That's how, routine that should be. So little things like that is what I kind of said to these ladies that as we're interviewing them, I said, anybody can smile and say good morning. That to me is not a skill set that's, that you should be applauded for. That's kind of,
so basic.
My 10-year-old could come in and do that for me. I don't really need help with that. I need help with the details that impact customer service downstream. And so anyway, so I guess to me, the point of this is how do you define customer service in your office? And it's going to be different for everybody. There's some people that don't mind waiting. That's just my personality. I can't sit still. I've got that attention span of a fly. I cannot sit and wait, right? But a lot of people don't mind. They, in fact, appreciate the opportunity to stop and pause and catch up on their news feed or their Facebook. Yeah. So what is it to you that defines customer service? Are you delivering it? Is this even a topic we should be talking about in this podcast? I don't know. You tell me. I'll quit talking now.
I think it's a critical topic, and I was so glad that you brought it up, because a lot of times I feel like we focus on customer service without calling it customer service, right? So all the things that you were just mentioning, are we prepared for this patient before they come in? Not in the moment that they come in, but actually before they come in. Are we prepared for them? And sometimes we'll call that preparedness, or we'll call that our chart preparation. And I think the point that you're making now is all of that does trickle back up to essentially customer service. So I'll kind of use a non-dental example here that may draw some deductions here, and then I want to give a dental example. So I conduct meetings at this one Starbucks with a couple of my clients. This is a central location for us. And so when I go in, even though I don't necessarily want or need the Starbucks drink, I always feel like if I'm going to sit there for a couple hours, I should probably buy a drink. And so I go and order this new thing that they've got for the fall, winter, whatever. I don't know how long. I think it's gone already, but I keep ordering it. And it's this brown sugar latte with almond milk. And so I've gone to the Starbucks, I don't know how many times, and I've ordered the same thing. It's not up on the menu anywhere. And I'm just like, hey, can you make the brown sugar latte? And they're like, sure, absolutely. No big deal, right? So I walk in this last time and ask the same question, because I never want to assume. I'm like, hey, can you make the brown sugar latte? And, let me back up. I walk in and the girl is over on the side of the counter, not behind the cash register. She's not making coffee, by the way, which I know is rare at Starbucks. She's kind of hanging out, slumped over on her phone on the counter. So that's kind of my first impression. Whatever. It's Starbucks. I walk up. And she kind of glances over at me, and then she says,
are you wanting to like order at the cash register or do you have an app? And my first thought is, why would I be standing at the cash register if I don't intend to order at the cash register? And no, I should have the app. Whatever, y'all can slaughter me for that. I don't have the app. I just order. I'm old school. I order at the counter.
Even I have the app. I, who have never been on Facebook or Instagram, I have the Starbucks app.
Which is probably why she asked the question. She's probably looking at me like I'm the idiot. Like, why would you order at the counter? But nonetheless, I'm standing at the cash register, and that's her question. So I'm like, no, I wanted to order here, at the cash register. And she's like, okay. She kind of moseys on over and says, okay, what would you like? And I'm like, do you guys still have, because I ask it every time, there's the same stinking Starbucks, and they always say yes. Do you guys still have the brown sugar latte? And she was like, yeah, hot or cold? I was like, hot, please. And she was like, well, are you okay with all the additional charges? I said, what? And she was like, well, there's like a charge. We have to like ring it up separately. And so it's like the charge for the espresso, I'm not making this up. The charge for the milk, the charge for this whatever brown sugar stuff they put in it. And I was like, it's all separate charges? And she's like, yeah. And so I was like, I know that I was looking at her like, I'm in like a weird time warp. I don't know what's happening here. And so she's like, yeah, I mean, I can ring it up for you and show you how much what it is, and you can decide then. I was like, no, I'm just going to do a vanilla latte. Just plain. Do you have a vanilla latte? She's like, yeah, I got a vanilla latte. I'm like, let's just go with that. And so it's a weird example to show. I never thought about customer service in Starbucks before because I've never had to. Every time it's, what would you like? Do you still make this? Absolutely we do. Here's your total, blah, blah, blah. It's easy. What's your name? Bethany. Here's your drink, blah, blah, blah. It's just normal every time. And then I had this one experience that totally changed my perception of this Starbucks, right? Because all of a sudden this drink that I order every time is all of a sudden complicated. And now I'm thinking, every time, have there been multiple charges and I haven't paid attention? Like this whole time they've been line iteming this drink and I did not pay attention. Oh my gosh, how much more have I been paying for this drink? Maybe I should get the app. Maybe if on the app, if I ordered it, it wouldn't be all the separate charges. Why am I even having to think about these stupid questions? Because of bad customer service. That's the impact of bad customer service in our practice. And we don't realize how many times we're down the road putting out fires that started way back with some inept employee putting a bad taste in somebody's mouth over something that they've never had to think about before. I'll give you another example of this, dental related. I was in a practice, and we had a whole team meeting on this, but I was in a practice where the team had gotten lax with doing chart preparation. And so I was watching this poor doctor run around trying to get all these exams done. And finally, she makes it to this kid that's been waiting for an exam. She sits down to evaluate some things with this kid. There's some problems that were going on that he'd been going to the oral surgeon for, the periodontist for. I wasn't necessarily listening to all the details, but he had been to other specialists. And so the doctor had to ask the parent, hey, what's the latest with the periodontist, I think. What's the latest with the periodontist? And so the mom starts to explain what the latest is, and then she goes, have you not been getting the correspondence from the periodontist? And the doctor's like, no, I haven't been. And then she goes, you know what, let me just double check. And so then she's having to pause in the moment with that parent and just double check to make sure the correspondence isn't there. No, the correspondence isn't there. And then also in that same appointment, we really needed to get, based on the last notes, we needed to get PAs of a couple of teeth that the doctor had been watching. But nobody had caught the fact that we needed to get PAs of a couple of these teeth that the doctor had been watching based on the last clinical note. So now, not only we've got doctor in the room and nobody's updated her, nobody's asked the mom about what's going on with the periodontist. The doctor's the first one to ask her about that. Nobody's apparently looked for the correspondence or updated the doctor that we have no correspondence, just so you are prepared, doctor. There's been no correspondence. And also, nobody's looked to see that this patient needs PAs. So now we've got the doctor in there having a conversation she shouldn't be having, in my opinion, if we would have done the prep work. She's having to pause the exam so that this child can go and get the PAs taken. And then she's having to find the time to come back to do the exam because the PAs were not taken. That's lack of preparation in my opinion.
And as a parent, I would be like, what the hell are y'all doing? Like, you just added 15 more minutes to this appointment.
Yeah.
That shouldn't have been that way.
To me, that's customer service.
Yeah. 1,000%.
Or lack
yes,
of.
1,000%.
Right? So it's not even just the preparedness factor. It's how it feels to a parent. And again, to equate it to the Starbucks example, she's come in multiple times for this appointment. This has never happened. The team has always looked prepared. The x-rays have been taken. We're on it, right? And so now all of a sudden she's got this one moment in time that is going to stand out to her. Like, oh, wait, y'all haven't been getting the correspondence and you haven't asked for the correspondence, or you haven't, like, it's like we didn't think about your child since the last time he was here. And as a clinician, you know that's likely. Like, we're probably not going to think about that child in between. But what systems did we put in place so that the parent doesn't feel like her kid was unimportant in the process? And now she's going to have this feeling of us being unprepared. And maybe she'll be fine. Maybe she'll be fine and we'll move on and no big deal. But what if? What if that just causes that little shred of doubt in her mind? And then some other mistake happens and it's a really big deal down the road. So
I mean, I feel like that defines my anxiety every day, because I feel like that happens all the time. And it is. I mean, I've said this before, like, do I have to do everything in this office? Do I have to answer every phone call? Do I have to check every EOB? Do I have to, we were talking in a couple of episodes ago about the human capital side of it. And so there's, at some point, I've got to just be like, well, I'm trying my best. I would love to say we're trying our best, and I don't know that everybody is doing their best, honestly. But it's something that, I don't know. I guess I liken it to how I make myself feel better. I'm like, well, we're still far above the pediatricians. Like, talk about that experience and how horrible that always is. And I don't care whatever pediatrician's listening to this. I don't care. I'm talking to you. You have a terrible experience. I've yet to find a good one. Yeah. Really, in probably almost any medical practice. And I feel like dental as a whole kills it over medical any day. So I guess, what do we do about it?
I was going to ask you the same question. It's like, to me, when you think about customer service on that deep of a level, where you realize that it's so much more than just smiling. And I think that's the number one main point. Whoever's listening to this needs to know customer service is far beyond that. Because we can smile all day, and if we're not fulfilling what we need to fulfill in being prepared for our patients, providing the best care, making the best care decisions for those patients and their caregivers, that can lead us down so many paths. And we need to make sure from a team standpoint that our team understands our expectations.
So here's the challenge that I think that everybody's probably thinking is, a lot of us have, like, luckily I don't, because I think people know that would be unacceptable in my practice. But yeah. I think we are taught to look up and say hello. And greet and all of that. But I think there's a good number of offices, probably 50% of the people listening to this podcast, that are like, what do you want me to do? At least she showed up to work. Yeah. Forget saying hello to the patient and all of that. Because I'll tell you, in any medical practice, and I've been in and out of so many with my dad this year, they don't say hello. They don't acknowledge you. They don't. So part of me goes, well, does it really matter? Because then anywhere else they go, they're not used to somebody saying hello. So why should I be the outlier and say hello? You know what I mean? Like, at least this employee showed up to work. But I think for most of us, it is like, your staff can, if they do acknowledge, say hello to the patient when they walk in, look them in the eye, say hello before they say, can I have your insurance card? Like, that's a win already. Mm-hmm. And now how do we get them to dig deeper?
Mm-hmm. So a couple of additional comments to add on to what you've just said. You're right. I mean, so many times we're just happy to have somebody that's executing at least a portion of the job. But I do think the risk of not challenging your team to higher expectations, it's not just the risk of patient dissatisfaction. There are so many negative consequences that can come from a patient believing or feeling that you're not doing a good job. And, we can trace it down the line to board complaints, negative reviews, bad word of mouth that gets back to referring offices. The consequences are great. So I think sometimes we're just like, oh, we just got to let Sally sit there and do what she does, and we'll deal with it. But I think the consequences to that are pretty great. And then I think sometimes, too, we rely too heavily on our clinical prowess, so to speak. It's like, oh, we're really good. We're a really good clinician. And so we're going to just rely on that. And because I can control that, right? Clinically, I can control the outcomes and I can do the very best dentistry, and that's going to be enough. But the way people, and my dad has said this a lot, who's a dentist, and he was like, you can provide the best clinical dentistry, and if they feel like you don't care, the dentistry does not matter. And that, I think there's so much truth to that. We can get the most beautiful aesthetic smile that this doctor created for us, but if his staff treated us like crap every time we walked in, if there's all kinds of insurance issues that they couldn't get figured out, if I was receiving kind of random, paperwork that didn't make sense, then it is going to make me second guess the clinical prowess of the doctor, not just the ineptness of the staff. And that's risky.
That is risky, because then the whole thing, it's like, at what point are they going, did I get good quality work? How could I have gotten good quality work when this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right? Those are all the easy things, and you've not gotten that under control. So I think, not to mention, like you're saying, like, yeah, if we're thinking clinically, I've got this. But as far as how exhausted I am going, shoot, that person, the parents already upset because Sally sent them the wrong paperwork, and now they had to do that here. And then now they waited, an extra 10 minutes than they were supposed to. And then now they're in the chair. And for me now, I'm going to have to stand on my head twice instead of just once. Like, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm exhausted at the end of the day. And it's like, my team should be helping me with this, because really what's going to happen then is, yes, it's about me, but it's kind of not about me. It is about you, Sally, because the more I have to do, the more burnt out I am, which means the shorter my longevity in this practice.
Yes.
Which is going to impact your bottom dollar. So
exactly. Well, and I think too, so much of it is just bringing awareness to the team. So we want to be able to talk about, you just asked me recently for a morning huddle sample, and it's such a basic outline, but it starts with, what were the wins from yesterday? So what did we do well yesterday? How did we knock it out of the park? And not just like we survived the day, but no, specifically, what were the wins? You know what? This one mom came in and she did not trust us. She had her arms crossed. She wouldn't engage with us. She was going to be defensive no matter what we said. By the end of that appointment, man, she was hugging us, tearfully thanking us for taking care of her child. That's a win. So how did we do that? How did we get that win? Specifically, how did we execute the appointment so that mom felt that way at the end of the appointment? And then on the flip side, what were the losses from yesterday? How did we mess up? Because we're going to make mistakes. I think one thing that's critical when we're thinking about customer service is, it is an unfortunate problem, but we are human and we make mistakes. And so while we may be striving for perfect execution of every single detail of that appointment, we're going to fall short. And I think it's important to, in a very collaborative environment, to be able to go, hey, let's talk about our successes, but let's also talk about what we messed up. And you know what? This dad got really frustrated at the end of the appointment because I had to print 3 different treatment plans in order for him to get accurate information. Okay, let's talk about, how did that happen? What do we need to do? How can we do it differently? So in that type of dialogue, and whether that happens at morning huddle, monthly, weekly, whatever staff meetings, we need to be able to focus on, how are we leveling up? How are we taking it to a higher level and doing a better job? And each day we should be able to find ways that we've succeeded and failed.
So then, do you have any tips for those of us that are like, dude, it's all I've got to hang on to these 5 team members, and the last time we posted for an employee, and this is what we've got? What would be some of your tips on how, like you're saying, level up? Like, what are, again, I'm trying to practice on the dentistry and paying the bills and fighting the insurance, and now I've got to up this staff, and that's who we ended up, that's the only one who applied. Like, that's what I've got. What practical, easy suggestions might you have? I'm sure there are little tips you could give us.
For sure. I would say, first of all, we've got to make sure that when we are bringing these leveling up type suggestions to the team, oftentimes it can be seen as, often it is, critique, right? It's just correction. You need to do this differently. And we have to really fight hard for the positive. A lot of times what I have found is people are harder on themselves than we can be on them. So when we engage in this type of conversation, I would make it very open-ended and not like, hey, as the doctor, I need to tell you, these were our wins yesterday. As the doctor, these were the failures, and I will not put up with failures. Right? So that kind of tone is not going to get us very far. What we need to do is that they themselves want improvement. And sometimes that's starting just with simple dialogue like this. What did we do well? Sally, did you have any wins yesterday? Anything that you felt like you just knocked it out of the park on, right? So we start simple. And then I think we start raising the challenge bar. Like, hey, Sally, in particular, I feel like one of the areas that comes up a lot is that we didn't have the appropriate insurance information ahead of time. And that frustrated the parent. Can I challenge you with something, Sally? Take a week. Can I have a one-on-one with you? I want you to put your creative juices into coming up with a plan for that. You do the research you need to do. You figure out, what would you do as a parent bringing their child into another practice? What would you want, and how can you create that? I want to see what you come up with. And then it's these hopefully positive challenges that we're putting on people. I can guarantee you that if all of the solutions are coming from one person on the team, whether it's the doctor or a manager or just somebody who's the teacher's pet, so to speak, none of those solutions will actually be implemented. So it needs to be, in most senses of the word, it needs to be that person's own solution to their problem. And might you have to tweak it or make some suggestions in that process. So Sally may come with like a basic 2-step plan, and you're like, in your mind, you're like, oh, honey, that's not going to get us anywhere. But then in that meeting, you're like, oh, these are 2 really good first steps. You know what? I think we could take it further. Because this solves problem A and B. This doesn't solve problem C and D. Remember how we kept having C and D problem? Can you think on this a little bit further? Let me give you a couple more days. See if you can come up with anything else. I'm going to think on it too. And then we'll put our heads back together. And then when we come back together, it's going to hopefully separately, not saying this to Sally, but when that doctor or manager, whoever comes back with Sally, they're prepared that the doctor has been thinking on that as well, and now we can solve problem C and D. So they may not come up with a robust enough plan, but at least it's becoming their solution and not somebody else's.
I like that a lot.
So that would be one of my main suggestions. I think exposure to other ideas, other practices, podcast. There are plenty of podcasts out there, books, things that you can do I've had a couple clients this year, and I love this idea that they've kind of had a level up theme. Like, we want to raise our professionalism. We want to raise our game. And so they've actually executed like where each team member picks a category or a topic, and they actually do a presentation at staff meeting. And it's like a professional, 5 to 7 minute presentation, visual aids, like most of them put together a PowerPoint, come dressed for success, like full on presentation, which has been really cool because they've gotten to dive into subject matters that they're passionate about, but they've also worked on their presentation skills. And me being a former speech communication teacher, I'm like, it all goes together. If you can speak in public, you can speak better with patients one-on-one. And so there's some side benefits to that, but it's just kind of this expectation of, we are in a professional environment. Let's act like professionals, and presentations have been part of that. Had another client that did a book club. So every quarter they were reading a different book, and the team would come together, and one person would lead that particular quarter's book club meeting and ask questions and dialogue. Okay, what are we going to implement from this? So whatever you can do to challenge your team to they themselves go and get the information. I had one client that actually challenged his team to listen to this particular podcast, which was a bunch of business, execution type things. And he actually, for a period of time, said, however many you listen to, and then give me a report on, and then I might ask you in our team meeting, hey, tell me about that podcast, and you need to be prepared. So you need to know that podcast so well that you can, in the moment, talk about it. And I'll give you $5 for every podcast you listen to for this period of time. And again, that was his way of challenging his team, like, go out and get the information that you need to level up. So I think there's a lot of creative ways like that we can spur our team on to better customer service.
I think what I've kind of done in that same vein, but I like these other ideas because I've not thought about those. But, if I get a email from ADOM, the
Yes.
Office Managers Dental Association, whatever that is, if I get something from them that it sounds like an interesting topic, or from Scheduling Institute, or from TAPD, or whatever it is, and I'm like, oh, this would be a good one for people to listen to, and I'll email them the link, and I'm like, whoever listens to this and then does a self-study sheet on it, with basically sending me your notes on it, I'll clock you in for an hour. So I should do this $5 thing. That'd be cheaper for me too.
Cheaper.
And a $5 Starbucks gift card. But I've been clocking them in for an hour if they listen. And
I love that. I think that's a great solution too. And it just puts the importance on, we're not okay with just status quo. Like I think we miss that opportunity a lot. I won't get on this soapbox, but one of the things I always say is, in the medical dental field, we should hold ourselves to a higher standard. The customer service and the level of detail that we put into serving our customers well should be 10 times, 20 times, 100 times better than Starbucks, right? Like it should be a different level of expectation that we have of our employees, because the costliness of a mistake in our field is so much greater than
I absolutely agree with you, and I think all the listeners would too. I think the challenge is just, again, back to that human capital. There's only so much I can do. And I do wonder, if it's when it's my name on the door, like, of course I'm going to care at one level. And how, in my mind though, I wish I don't say it, and because I can't find a way to say it nicely, but part of me is like, but you want me to be okay because you need a job. And anyway, but I do agree. And I think the challenge here with this episode is, are we challenging ourselves enough to think about all of those things? Or is a smile just about the definition of customer service in your practice?
Yeah. And don't let it be. Don't let it be. We're in a field that should require much more than a smile for customer service.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.